What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing my predictions for the AFC South. This division includes the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Tennessee Titans. Remember, these are predictions based on last season, the offseason moves in free agency and the draft, and the schedule for the season. Also, remember, these are just my opinions, and if yours differ, just let me know in the comments, and I'm going to try to respond to as many as I can. Also, I appreciate the recent support on the videos, and I hope you enjoy. The AFC South is one of the stranger divisions. I don't really consider any team in it a Super Bowl contender, or at the very least only one of them. But that doesn't mean I'm not really excited to watch these teams battle it out. This division reminds me of the AFC East from like 2021 in terms of young quarterbacks when they had Zach Wilson, Tua, and Mac Jones. Now I can't wait to watch Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, and CJ Stroud. And I guess Trevor Lawrence, he's still young, so he still counts, I guess. Coming in fourth place, I have the Houston Texans, who I would say majority of the people also would have them coming in last. The Texans did have an insane draft recently, though, in 2023. The organization drafted CJ Stroud, quarterback out of Ohio State, second overall, and then they traded picks 12 and 33 in this year's draft, plus a 2024 first and third, all to move up to select Will Anderson out of Alabama, who's one of the best edge prospects in the most recent years. These are some steps in the right direction after a few lackluster years they've had. The Texans went 3-13 and 1 last season, taking fourth in the AFC South, and they had the second worst record in the entire NFL, just behind the Bears. The offense, which was led by Davis Mills, was ranked 30th in total offense, 25th in the pass, and 31st in rushing. This is somewhat surprising, as they did have a pretty decent rookie running back in Dameon Pierce, I'd say. But when you're trailing for majority of your games, you're going to have to throw the ball a lot just to kind of get back into it and score fast, thus their running game being so poor. It also doesn't help when you have Davis Mills in the pocket and teams are just going to stack the box and force him to throw it. The defense was also lackluster, ranking 27th in total defense, 11th in passing, and 32nd in rushing. So they were the worst rushing defense in the entire NFL. But, like I just said, the stat is somewhat skewed because of when you're behind in so many games. This means the opposing team runs the ball more than average, trying to waste clock, and this resulted in more rushing attempts, more yards, and more rushing touchdowns on the ground against them, thus bringing their ranking down. If they had a better offense or maybe in more games, they wouldn't be run against as much. But they were still a poor defense. They allowed the 6th most points in the entire league as well, and 27 total. But all of that is behind us, as this was last year and not this year. This team is a lot to be excited for. They still have a poor wide receiver group, led by Robert Woods, Nico Collins, and John Mechie. They did add Dalton Schultz, who's a good after-the-catch, big-body tight end. I really like them having a left tackle, and Laremy Tunsil for Stroud, and I also like Shaq Mason at right guard. Their defense is led by Jerry Hughes, who I actually really like. I remember watching him against my favorite team last year, and he absolutely bullied us. And now they pair him up with Will Anderson. Last year they drafted Derek Stingley, 3rd overall, cornerback out of LSU. Stingley had a pretty mediocre rookie campaign. He'd recorded 1 interception, 5 pass breakups, and 43 tackles. I'll give him a pass, though, as he only played 9 games his first season and was with the Texans, so it's kind of hard to do much on that team regardless. I was a little upset with the firing of Lovie Smith. I get it. He had a terrible season, but he was your head coach for 1 year. It kind of feels like they hired him just to fill the 1 year. They knew they were going to be bad. They didn't give him much. No coach is succeeding with that roster. But just because I was displeased with the firing does not mean I don't like the hiring. D'Amico Ryans is who they hired, and I thought that was a great head coaching decision. He's coming from a great defensive team in the 49ers, who under Ryans was 1st or 2nd in the league in defense. I don't usually like defensive coaches to develop young quarterbacks like Stroud, but I can make an exception for this one. I know all of this sounds good, but in reality, they'll most likely still come in 4th in the South. Stroud simply is just a rookie and doesn't have the supporting cast to make up for some of the mistakes that he's gonna make. He's gonna throw some bad balls, he's gonna throw picks, some fumbles. He's a rookie, he's gonna make these mistakes, and the supporting cast around him just isn't good enough to make up for it. This is arguably the worst receiving core in the league. It's not even arguable. This is definitely, off the top of my head, got to be bottom 3 receiving core in the NFL. I can only think of the Giants, the Titans. It's up there in worst wide receiver cores. The defense doesn't look to be a top 10 unit either, but I expect some improvement, which will put him in the 15 to 20 range with the hiring of D'Amico Ryans. There are some winnable games on their schedule. I don't see them going 0-17, and after looking at it, I have them winning 3 to 5 games this year. In third place in the AFC South, I have the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are coming off of a major down year considering their success in the prior years. After starting the season 7-3, they somehow ended up losing their last 7 games to end the year 7-10. The Titans are a team that up until last year were oddly competitive for the AFC Championship. When I say oddly, it's mainly due to them not having the greatest roster. Like, they really only had one superstar, and that was Derrick Henry, who even when he missed some time, they were still winning games without him. A.J. Brown, I know, was on the roster, but he was still very young and was just drafted in 2019. And although he was a game changer, I'm not going to count him as a superstar. This team I do expect to take another step backwards from last year. I do know they had some bad injuries or bad QB play with Tannehill aging, Malik Willis, and Josh Dobbs in there. They also had their rookie first-round pick wide receiver get injured, leaving the majority of the targets to be split between Robert Woods and Austin Hooper. After saying that out loud, it sounds so much like that is abysmal. No fan base should be subjected to watching Austin Hooper highlights as wide receiver 2 for 17 games. There's no crime that deserves that punishment. I'm sorry for those from Tennessee or fans of the Titans. We can move on from that, though. That's last year. This is this year. New year, new Titans. But last year they did finish on offense 28th overall, 30th in passing, and 13th in rushing. Derrick Henry had a healthy season playing in all 16 games, not all 17, but 16, having himself a pretty productive year going over 1,500 rush yards. This is pretty impressive as every team they faced knew they couldn't throw the ball, so they just stacked the box and he still produced. The defense was middle of the pack at 15th overall, but get this, they were number 1 rush defense and dead last in pass defense. Never have I seen a defense so polarizing. One reason they were the number 1 rush defense was because of Jeffrey Simmons, their defense tackle, who I absolutely love. They ended up extending him this offseason to a 4-year deal, which is really smart move. Big brain by the Tennessee Titans. Good. Pay your best players. Stay relevant. I was really hoping my team was going to trade for him. There were some rumors before the draft that they were potentially going to trade him. I don't know if that's true, but good for them. They kept him. He's your second best player, maybe better than Henry at this point. I mean, they're both your top 2 players, so pay him. He deserved it. Speaking of the draft, they added Peter Skoronski, left guard out of Northwestern. He'll be a day 1 starter lined up next to Andre Dillard on the left side, who I actually think will have a breakout year now that he gets a chance to be a starter. One of the biggest draft stories was Will Levis going at the top of the 2nd round of the Titans. It seemed like everybody and their mother thought he was going to go in the top 10, and I know there's a bunch of stories that come out before the draft. It changes the media, it changes what, the average person thinks, and people, everybody thought it was going top 10, but these teams do their homework, they scout, they know more than us. Wasn't actually close to being the top 10, wasn't even a first rounder, but I actually think it was pretty good for the Titans to take a swing. It was a 2nd round pick. You used your first rounder on a better prospect at offensive line, give him some protection. I actually expect him to get some playing time this season as well, since I don't see them competing. And once they're eliminated from playoff contention or trending in that direction, I think we'll see some of him, and they're going to throw him in, especially if Tannehill starts off shaky. It won't be long until Tennessee fans are chanting for Levis and they send him in there. It is somewhat of a decent situation for him to go to, and I'm heavy on the decent. He'll have a good running game, which is great for rookie quarterbacks to have, but his weapons outside of Derrick Henry are still terrifyingly bad. I mean, he's got Treylon Burks, who is only going to be his 2nd year at a shortened rookie season, and then they've got Nick Westbrook and Kyle Phillips. I mean, this is atrocious. I really do like Mike Vrabel, though, and I think he'll get the absolute most out of this roster, which isn't going to be much, I don't think. I do think if this team had an average coach, they'd be battling it out for a top 5 pick. I hope they keep Vrabel after the season and let him develop Levis instead of getting rid of him with Tannehill when this possibly goes sideways this year. I know he's been there for a while, and if they have another bad year, they might look into getting rid of him, but I think that'd be a terrible idea. Don't bring in a new coach and make Levis start all over again. After looking at their schedule, I've been winning about 6 to 8 games this year. The team out coming in 2nd place in the AFC South is the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are coming off a season in which they went 4-12-1 and took 3rd in the AFC South and fired their head coach Frank Reich during the season and finished with Jeff Saturday, who also didn't do much with his time after winning his first game. Probably the lowest point of the season is when they gave up a 33-0 lead against the Vikings and ended up losing in overtime. This was unexpected after a pretty good season the prior year where they barely just missed the playoffs. If you remember, they lost in Week 17 on the road to the Jaguars, who were going for the number 1 overall pick. And they ended up cutting Carson Wentz in result of this. They ended up going with Matt Ryan last year, and that was pretty ugly / unwatchable football as he looked very geriatric out there. He played 12 games and actually completed a good percentage of his passes at 67%, but he only had 14 touchdowns to 13 interceptions in 12 games. This offense, or team as a whole, did deal with plenty of injuries to some key players last year, and Jonathan Taylor, and especially Shaq Leonard, who's one of the best defensive players in this league, but he only played 1 game last year. Their leading receiver was Michael Pittman, who had a pretty good year with 99 catches, 925 yards, and 4 touchdowns. This was with grotesque quarterback play. The Colts were the 31st ranked offense, 23rd in the pass, 23rd in the rushing. They're also the 30th scoring offense. The defense was 30th as well, 12th in pass, and 21st in rushing. Now enough with the atrocious 2022 Colts, because we're looking forward to this upcoming season. Colts made a massive change at the most important position of football by drafting Anthony Richardson, 4th overall quarterback out of Florida. Richardson's regarded as a pretty raw talent at quarterback. I mean, he's an exceptional athlete for the position, but not as great a passer as the other 2 top quarterbacks were in college. He held a 54.7 completion percentage in his career at Florida. Now, this doesn't mean he can't succeed in the NFL. I mean, we've seen recent QBs improve their passing while in the NFL, like guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I do think this is a great situation. Not great, but a pretty good situation for him to walk into. He's got a great running back in Jonathan Taylor, who at the moment I'm making this is holding out for a contract extension, which I'm pretty shocked. I thought he's only been in the league for like 2 years. He was hurt last year, so I really don't know why. But anyway, get your money. Good running back, good for Richardson. He also has a pretty decent wide receiver 1 in Pittman and a pretty good offensive line with guys like Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly. The defensive unit, if healthy, can be pretty good with guys like Shaq Leonard, who's a consensus first-team All-Pro since he's entered the league in 2018. They also have DeForest Buckner and Pay on the defensive line. They do have a pretty average secondary. I mean, their best player is Kenny Moore at corner. Another major change this organization went with is hiring Shane Steichen. For those who don't know, Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles the past 2 seasons, paired up with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Steichen was also the play caller for the Eagles, like most offensive coordinators nowadays. I think it's a safe bet that we'll see some heavy RPOs called, which is going to require some pretty quick decision-making from Richardson. He's also going to have to read a defense pre-snap, and perhaps he isn't the greatest at it to begin with in Week 1, but he can get better with time, as we've seen Hurts do. I don't think this Colts team will be particularly great right away, as it is a rookie quarterback. He will make mistakes. It's not the greatest roster. They won 4 games last year, and they're playing in the AFC, so they're going to be playing some great quarterbacks. But looking at the schedule, I can see them winning about 6 to 8 games this year. Coming in first place in the AFC South, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Pretty consensus among NFL fans. The Jaguars had themselves a breakout season in their first year of the Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence era. The team went 9-8 and first in the AFC South. They ended up storming back against the Chargers in a home wildcard game, down 28-0. They ended up losing to the eventual Super Bowl champs in the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional game 27-20 in Arrowhead. Trevor Lawrence ended up having himself a pretty good sophomore season. He started all 17 games. He threw for 4,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions, while still completing 66.3% of his passes. The offense as a whole all had a breakout year with a lot of new pieces being involved, such as wide receiver Christian Kirk and running back Travis Etienne getting healthy. Etienne led the way with rushing with 1,125 yards, and Kirk led the way receiving with 1,108 yards. Not to mention guys like Zay Jones and Evan Ingram also having themselves some career years as well. The Jags were ranked 10th in offense, coming in 10th in passing and 14th in rushing. Their defense was decently solid, ranking 12th overall, but 28th in the pass and 12th in the rush. Passing defense was obviously very poor, and this is something you've got to improve upon, especially if you're in the AFC, With the QBs you're going to have to face year in and year out, and Burrow, Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, throw in Deshaun Watson if you want now Aaron Rodgers. Like, you're just going to have to improve on your pass defense if you want to compete and keep up with these guys. The Jags selected Anton Harrison, tackle out of Oklahoma in the first round. This is an alright pick. It's not a game changer. He wasn't a top tackle prospect, but the Jags also, they didn't have a top first round pick. They had a late first rounder. And I just won't ever criticize a team for selecting an offensive lineman, especially this high up in the draft, when you have a young star QB that you're trying to invest in and surround with pieces. The Jags also added Calvin Ridley last offseason, which a lot of people forget just because we haven't seen him play in 2 years. And I'm excited to see him finally wearing a Jags uniform in the number 0. Last time we saw Ridley 2 years ago was a great wide receiver 1, but I'm just not going to go into the year expecting the same production just because, once again, it was 2 years ago. Their offensive weapons as a whole are pretty great, in my opinion, for where they were, 2 years ago. Their line is also pretty strong, and I expect this offense to take another leap forward. I just really like what they've done as an organization since getting Trevor Lawrence and just surrounding him with pieces just to further, solidify and make sure he has success in this league. Their defensive personnel is pretty iffy, though. I do like Josh Allen and Devin Lloyd a good bit, especially Josh Allen. Their first overall pick last year in Trayvon Walker had an alright rookie year, but that doesn't mean he can't have a great sophomore year. If he makes a massive jump, this defense can certainly creep into the top 10. I do expect this team to make the playoffs pretty easily, considering the division they're in, and there's really no other serious contenders in it. I do really like the hiring of Doug Peterson last year. As an Eagles fan, Doug Peterson was a pretty awesome coach. He wasn't the greatest play caller, and I understand why he was fired. But with the Jags, he looks awesome. He's still a good coach. He's won the Super Bowl, so he can win the whole thing. And I just think he's a great leader and somebody to have for a young quarterback. With the Jags, I just don't see them beating any of the top 3 to 4 teams in the AFC this coming season, in the Chiefs, Bills, or the Bengals, perhaps the Ravens as well. But maybe Lawrence comes out insane this year and he, proves everybody wrong and the Jags are the team to beat in the AFC. I don't predict that, but it could happen. After looking at their schedule, I've them winning about 10 to 12 games this year and getting the 4th seed in the AFC. Those are my AFC South predictions. I have the Texans coming in 4th, the Titans in 3rd, the Colts in 2nd, and the Jacksonville Jaguars taking 1st. Remember, these are just my opinions, so if you disagree, please feel free to let me know down below. This division should be pretty exciting to watch with a plethora of young quarterback talent and the potential that there is. Once again, I appreciate the recent support on the videos. I'm going to be away, so I won't have a video out for the next 10-ish days, so sorry about that. Hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know which division you guys want to see next in the AFC, and I will see you in the next one.